Okay, and the next thing I want to talk to you all about is how to do that quarantine or isolation room change. So you've already have seen the COVID response team's workbook that was mentioned a couple times. And so what we want to do from there, now that we have that student information, we want to do the room change. So this is what the room change site looks like. You can find that at housing.kent.edu. And when you hear the title of ITRC, that is what we're referring to of the room change website in general. This is what it looks like. Taking a look at all of these very simple tabs along the top here. So we have our room change is the tab you will be using in your role as a safety assistant or advisor or supervisor. So from here, there's a couple things I want to highlight for you all. So I also mentioned the Google Drive for quarantine isolation resources. And so this is what this looks like right here. You can see we have operations for fall 21 and then our previous two. I'm gonna bring you in here to show you a couple highlights here. These are our floor charts that you can see. There's a plan as well as some room change resources later on in the presentation. We're going to talk about resources, and this is going to be one that you're going to want to reference and bookmark. Why this is important is because we have floor charts for where folks are staying. And so you can see here, CCE is holding our isolation students. So as a reminder from the presentation earlier, students that need isolation are COVID positive. And so in the difference with that is in CCF, those are our quarantine folks that might have been a close contact or needing to quarantine for travel purposes. But our isolation students in CCE are COVID positive. And so we have a student that needs to go into isolation. So where do we go from here? The first thing we want to do is we want to open this floor chart. We want to confirm that we have open spaces. And so this is what you are going to want to pull up first to make sure that you have available. You are also going to want to check that workbook that the COVID response team shared with you. And so you can see here is an image of the workbook again. And so a couple of things I want to highlight on here for you is that are going to be important are our stars. So what do they need? Quarantine or isolation is indicated here on the left. Their beginning date and their end date is also on the far right of the workbook. And the only important thing that we actually need to add to the workbook, otherwise this is very much just a COVID response team operation, is we need to know where their Kent quarantining location is. And so they use that pretty versatily as far as quarantine or isolation. But again, we're gonna check to see which one they need because that indicates whether we're in CCE or CCF. And then over here, this indicates where we're plugging them in at. So if I had the actual workbook live in front of you, this would be empty. It would only have the student information that they would plug in themselves, and we are responsible for plugging in wherever we put them. So here we go. CCE 103 is available. And so what we would want to do, I have a student example for all of us here that we're going to go through. We're going to plug in the student's information because we're going to pretend that the COVID response team just gave us this information on the workbook. So we're going to put the student information here. We're going to fill in their information as far as their phone number goes, made that up for us. We also know that their quarantine start is this because we took it off of the workbook. And so 7 days from now, because that's what the COVID response team told us, we're going to add that there. Any other relevant notes can be helpful, but not required. So if the COVID response team gives us notes, cool. If not, we don't need to add anything to this section. So we plug this in. This workbook is our own floor charts. This is an internal resident services document. And so this is so that housekeeping knows who's in each space. So that's your coordinators know who's in each space. And if we need to do any follow-up on this person, we know that Kurt is in 103 CCE. So cool. We've got all of our internal documents done, but what we need to do, the most important part, is that we need to do the actual room change. So again, I go back to this room change website. And so from here, super easy, super user friendly for y'all. You're going to go to room change. That's going to populate. You will be plugging in the student information. So again, we just put Kurt in CCE 103. So now we're going to do the actual room change. We're going to search for Kurt, and currently Kurt is staying in Johnson Hall. We're selecting that. And then this shows every space that's open on campus. So it's going to be a little bit easier if you filter a bit. And so we've got the Centennials, and so we really are going to need to filter down through here, but that is okay. So we said that Kurt was going in 103 CCE. We just select that. So here is our room change from Johnson 103 to CCE 103, and then we want to give a reason for that room change. The only reason we are ever doing this for quarantine or isolation is COVID-19. If you know the end dates for the quarantine or isolation, feel free to add that as a note. Otherwise, that is all that we need to do, and we submit this request. So as far as the actual room change goes, you are done. But something that's super important is that we want to make sure that we turn on Kurt's key access, right? So we don't want Kurt going to any desks. We don't want them reaching out and asking us to let them into this hall. We want to make sure that their flashcard access turns on. And so you all have the ability to do that through this room change website. So you can see here is a pretty clear outline of the information that we have. It's super simple. So what we do to turn on that flashcard is advance to approve awaiting temp key. We're going to click that. I call this kind of the 2-click method here. You can see a status history is going to be helpful. So here I am submitting this room change, done. I approved the temp key, done. And I'm going to sign out that temp key. So if you're familiar with desk operations, this is when a student would come to the area desk and sign out a temp key. And then from there, that's the key that they would use, right? So that key is on and activated. And so this right here, advanced to temp key signed out, activates that flashcard, so that way Kurt can access CCE 103. It's super important that this is where we stop, because we don't want to check this resident into CCE because they don't actually live there. So when this part of quarantine or isolation is done for them in 10 to 14 days, we want them to be able to go back to Johnson without any impact, right? So if we check them into CCE, they will not be able to return to Johnson, and their card access will be turned off to Johnson because we check them in. So please don't do that. Something that's really great is that if any of this is a mistake, or we don't have any longer have CCE 103 open for some reason, we plugged them into the wrong spot, we can go back here and cancel this request. And as you can see, canceled is right there. But we do want Kurt to go to CCE. The final step that we do is we are going to send them a quarantine or isolation email. So these templates are here for you already. You are going to copy and paste this information, plug in CCE 103. It's already in there for you. Popular room. We're going to say, "Hi, Kurt. This is the information you need." And we're going to copy and paste and send this email to these students so that they know all of this basic information about quarantine or isolation, with the coordinators being the resource. When you email this student directly, please CC both coordinators on that email. Otherwise, that is how we do a room change for our students in quarantine or isolation.